People living along Spyglass Drive in Panama City Beach saw quite the scene yesterday as Hurricane Sally churned in the Gulf. The storm washing a sailboat onto shore right before their eyes. The boat anchoring itself by Public Beach Access Number 1, where it currently remains. News 13's Faith Graham joins us live this evening from the beach with the story. Faith?
Jerry, take a look at this sailboat behind me. It has been quite the attraction all day long. People have been walking up and down the beach, taking photos, taking videos, and asking each other, how did this get here? Now, I spoke with Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission officers earlier today, and they tell me that this boat is actually all the way from Tampa.
Going up, I'd say it was like I described it like just a flat plate of glass across the horizon, just the smoothest, clearest water that I'd ever seen. But so starting off, there was already, it was calm, but it was already not that. So
no, there was a good swell. There was a good swell, and the weather was pretty nice. It was choppier than when we'd come out, but I think we'd had exceptionally calm weather on the way up there, and coming back, it was significantly rougher.
Going up, remember, it was glass out there, just beautiful. We were having a great time. Saw dolphins, saw the flying fish that stayed below the water for the most part, other than our unfortunate one. And coming back, it was completely different. And we ended up leaving Pensacola about 1 o'clock on Friday and quickly got out of cell phone range after a couple hours. And then about 5 o'clock on Friday, once we were out of cell phone range, the tropical depression came across as it was supposed to, below Miami and below Florida, and below the Keys, and then made an instant northward turn due north along the west coast of Florida, and picked up speed and became a tropical storm, Sally, after we had already left. So unbeknownst to us, we were sailing right at it, a beeline. It was coming this way. It was coming north from down below, going this direction, and boom, that's where we hit it. So by the time we came across, it took 2 days to get, we took us a day and a half, 2 days to get here, and took it 2 days to get up the coast, and bam, that's right where we hit it. So that's kind of why we still sailed that route on the day, because the weather report was good. It was supposed to be a light. We were worried about having enough wind. And you remember, it just kept getting more and more wind and more seas as we came from here down here. So this is about where we would have gotten Friday and all day Saturday, then overnight Saturday. And that was about 5, 6 o'clock on Saturday morning, 5 a.m. as we hit the storm. And then that's about where we got picked up.
One of the weird things was the perception of time, and how when you're in a situation like that, you're getting bashed around, you're throwing up. I was throwing up. I was trying to drink water. I was trying to get you to drink water. You were sicker than we were to start with, but by the end, I think we were all pretty sick. You sort of 1 hour runs into the next. The Saturday night, that first 24 hours was bad, but then it just got progressively worse during Saturday. And then it got dark on Saturday, and we were like, God, are we going to get through this, on Saturday night? And that seemed like a very, very long night, Saturday night. Never seemed to end. We were really waiting for the sun to come up. It never really did.
The first problems were that the front 2 hatches gave way, and we were taking on water in the front, but it was the water that came on the front because we were heeled way over to port. I'd say heeled over to the starboard side so drastically because the winds were picking up on Saturday that it shorted out our bilge pumps. So if water gets in, which normally happens in a boat, they pump it out. So the pump's in the middle, but the electronics are on the side of the boat, about at floor level. But we were heeled over so hard, we were angled over so hard, the water was sloshing up and touching where the electronics of the power of those bilge pumps, those water pumps, bilge/water pumps were, and shorted them out. So then they quit working. So then as more water would come in, it was filling up the bottom of the boat. So we were getting worried about that. It got to about floor level, a little bit more than floor level. But as we hit the hurricane and we had no, before on Saturday and overnight, you remember that we would get hit with a big wave about every 5 minutes, right? That would come over top and gush into the boat and gush water down into the bottom. Once we hit the hurricane, it was every 10 seconds, every 15 seconds, we were getting hit by a big wave that was pushing water in through the portholes into the boat, into the front of the boat. So we were taking on water a lot quicker once we hit the hurricane. So we were afraid if it got too high, that it would rise up and short out the main battery bank, which would then short out which would then kill the engine. So then we would have no power. We would have no engine power. We were still under sail. We had the main reefed way down, if you recall, to try to keep the boat a little bit more level. And we had the front jib reefed in real hard too. So not much was sailing. So we tried to reduce our sail print so that the high wind wasn't overpowering the boat and knocking us over. So we still had a little bit of power, but we were afraid that if we lost the engine and something happened to our sails, then we would be just a bobber out in the middle of the ocean.
It's amazing how quickly you can go downhill in 24 hours. Because if you think by the same time we left on Friday, that 24 hours later on Saturday, we were in a real mess. I got pretty badly seasick. Then your dad started to get seasick, and your dad never. I mean, so for experienced sailors like George and your dad to get sick, I think George was probably the most unaffected by it all. Amazingly, despite his age, I guess he just has got really good sea legs.
So once we made the final decision that we need help, and we decided to hit the EPIRB. So again, why we decided to do that was because the boat wasn't going to take being sailed out of the storm, and we still didn't know it was a hurricane, right? So we still didn't understand what we were in.
Yeah, I know that around this time I was almost completely out of it. I was totally dehydrated. I hadn't gotten any sleep and had been battered around like a piñata for the better part of 48 hours. So I was kind of slipping in and out of consciousness, and I didn't even see the helicopter until it was right over us. And by that point I had to ask Graham if it was actually there, as I was seeing faces in the water and hallucinating, sick as a dog. To keep from getting seasick, what you do is you try to pick a steady point on the horizon. So my dad kept telling me, keep your eye on the horizon, keep your eye on the horizon, till I eventually looked at my dad and said, there is no more horizon. It was just these walls of water. It was really, really quite surreal. It was almost like Moses parting the Red Sea or something like that. The problem was then, because of that, by the time the helicopter got to us, they couldn't just throw a line down and hoist us out of there because our mast was whipping around so much. So they hovered over us for a couple minutes and essentially couldn't do anything. Because there was no way in hell any of us were getting in that water. Luckily, they put us in touch with a Good Samaritan vessel that was about 40 minutes away, that was waiting to pull into the port of Tampa. Next thing I know, all of a sudden there's this massive shipping vessel pulled up right alongside us. Essentially like the size of a building floating on the water. COSCO Malaysia was able to get us a line, and we think that they're going to try to tow us into port, but what ends up happening is they open up a hatch about halfway up the side of the ship, and we end up having to ram the side of the ship just so that we are pulled up next to it, so they can toss us down a ladder from this hatch so they can hoist us out of there. Now, my impatient ass, as soon as they throw down the ladder, I jump and cling on to essentially do a Spider-Man up the side of the ship. Now, for the rest of the crew, they toss down a separate line so that they can tie it around their waists, and in case they slip off the ladder. Because if I'd have let go of the ladder once I was on it, I'd have either been crushed between Yes Dear and COSCO Malaysia, or I'd have gone into the water and been sucked into the turbine.
All four of us got on board, and we were in this sort of little room immediately on board. And as soon as I was on board the big ship, it was like we were on dry land. Mm-hmm. It was amazing. I mean, didn't feel the sea at all. It was just bizarre. They gave us these really cool jumpsuits to wear and gave us new clothes and took us to the sick bay and checked us over. And I realized at that point I'd got a pretty big gash on my head, but I didn't need stitches. They fed us. They gave us all this great Indian food and like really made a fuss of us, didn't they?
In hindsight, you say, well, the boat made it. The boat made it to Panama City. I don't know that we would have made 2.5 more days on a boat with no power at the mercy of the hurricane waves.
Yeah.
That's where somebody said, oh, well, you'd have made it. I'm like, just because the boat made it doesn't mean we would have made it. My analogy is you put me in a 55-gallon drum and push me down and over Niagara Falls. And that 55-gallon drum may end up in one piece, a mile down the river, but I probably, being inside of it, probably ain't gonna make it.